what time are we starting? Are we
good
now?
You're good.
Starting now? Okay. What time do I need to end?
None of us will tell you to quit.
Well, I might need, Brother Dibble might come up though. I don't want to get in trouble. Okay. But is it, do we have a time though? Should I just have something to aim at?
Yeah, there's a lunch after, but if you were to go.
Well, if we're talking about biblical archaeology, that's a dangerous thing to tell me. So I just need a time. So 45 minutes from now, is that kind of what we're doing?
11:40.
Oh, okay, perfect. Very good, very good. Okay. Well, Brother Noah, here we go. You guys ready for this? Great to have everybody here this morning. Almost, my computer says it's 2 p.m., but that's Indy time. So thankfully we have been here that long. So my name is Andrew Herbst. Great to have gotten to know a lot of you, talked with a lot of you, and hopefully after the session. So Toby, right?
Yeah.
Toby, I need to talk to you afterward just to say hi to you, okay? So, very good. Okay, so we're going to talk about biblical archaeology today. And this is a fantastic topic. I know a lot of you went to the museum yesterday. Was anybody in the first group that was not in the group that I was in? Yeah, so I love that we were able to do that yesterday and then be able to talk about some of these things today. Thankful that my wife is here, my beautiful wife, Gethsemane. If you haven't talked to her, make sure to go say hi to her as well. And then the Zunigas and the Gills, we love them very much. And we're just thankful to be here. Love the Royer family, everyone here. Everyone's been so kind. And we're gonna talk about a few things. So this guy has a great name, Israel Finkelstein. Okay, great, one of my favorite names, Finkelstein. Okay, but he is what I would call a great bad example. Okay, he is a great bad example. And in one of his books, he co-authored a book called The Bible Unearthed. Okay, now in this book, I want you to tell me what you think about his thoughts about the Bible. Okay, Brother Joey, you ready for this? He says, now this book is primarily about the Old Testament. Brother Zuniga, I don't think he really hits the New Testament very much in this, right? So primarily Old Testament. This is what he says. He says the Old Testament is a brilliant product of human imagination. All right? This is a quote from page 63. He is specifically talking about the Exodus, but this kind of extends to pretty much the entire Old Testament. All right, Brother Adrian? So he says, the conclusion, kind of all of what he's been saying thus far, he says the conclusion is that the Exodus did not happen at the time and the manner described in the Bible. That seems irrefutable when we examine the evidence. Okay, so let's just... I don't want to spend a lot of time in kind of this intro. I want to get to the cool stuff. But there are people like Dr. Finkelstein. If you say his name in kind of a scholarly setting, everybody knows who this guy is. Okay, this is not a nobody. This is a very influential scholar. But look at what he says. He says the Bible, the Old Testament specifically, is a brilliant product of human imagination. He says that the Old Testament, you have a little bit of history over here. You have some fairy tales over here. You have some legends over here. And it's like a basket of all these stories and all of these things kind of woven together. Now, what do you think about that? He says stories like the Exodus did not happen the way the Bible says it did. Okay? So, Brother Adrian, would you enjoy reading this author?
Maybe just to see all the things he says.
All the weird. Okay, how many of you are like, this guy sounds amazing? I would love to read this guy. He sounds like he loves the Bible. Anybody? How many of you are like, this guy sounds like a crazy guy? Okay, because he does not believe in the Bible. Okay, so what we want to do, and I'm trying to remember who said it. Oh, I think it was the archaeologist yesterday at the museum in our group. He said, people used to come to him all the time and say, I cannot believe in the Bible because of all of the inaccuracies. And he started to ask them, well, which ones are you talking about? And they cannot give a good example. Because what we're going to talk about today is the Bible is a history book. And this is going to be something throughout the whole lesson. Are you ready for it? I'm going to say the Bible is and then you have to repeat back to me, a history book. All right, okay, you ready to practice it? Okay, the Bible is a history book. You guys already get an A+. Very good. So I'm gonna skip ahead just a little bit here, and I'm gonna give you a very important word here. Okay? This is one of my favorite words. Okay? This word is called inerrancy. And inerrancy means that the Bible does not have any errors in it. Can I get an amen off that?
Amen.
Okay? I know this is a Bible-believing church, and we have many churches represented here. We love the Bible. That's why we're at this conference.
Yeah.
Right? And so this is a very important word, because when we're talking about what is inside of Scripture, when we're talking about what we're reading, the very words of Scripture, if there are errors in this book, how can you believe it? Right? These are all questions that I know we've probably thought about. So if we can't believe what's in this book, if we can't trust the words that God has given us, how can you trust God to save you? If you can't trust the words in this book, how can you trust that when you ask God for forgiveness, He'll actually forgive you, Brother Tyler? Right? How can you trust if you can't trust the word? So here's just a few more things, and then we're going to get into the cool stuff. I'm trying to move a little bit quick here, but this is when we say revelation, we're not talking about the book of Revelation. We're talking about how God has revealed Himself to us. Okay? So God has revealed Himself to humans through history, through events. Okay? Now, what do I mean by that? Okay? How did the Israelites know for sure that God was a redeemer? Because He actually brought them out of Egypt. Right? How did the Israelites know that God could save them from their enemies? Because He actually did that, right? So these are some very important things here, very important concepts. If the history is unreliable, then the doctrine is unreliable. Okay? If the history is unreliable, then the doctrine that was revealed through that event is unreliable. Okay? Let me give you a really good example. Okay? I'll give you a couple other ones. Let's move to the New Testament. Why are you Pentecostal? Now, overall, we would say we're Pentecostal because the whole Bible teaches it. But if we say we're Pentecostal because we go back to what? The day of Pentecost. There was actually a historical event in Acts 2 where God poured His Spirit down upon all flesh. Can I get an amen? Amen. Because the Bible is a... Oh, very good. The Bible is a history book. And we are Pentecostal because the day of Pentecost actually happened. When it says, then Peter said unto them, guess what? He actually said some things, Brother Paul, when he actually preached on that day. Right? So we don't just see the Bible as a spiritual book full of kind of mysticism or just spiritual whatever, but we know that God has taught humans. He has revealed Himself through actual history. Okay? So I've got just one more slide, and then we're going to get into the fun stuff. But we have to lay this foundation, because if we cannot trust the history, we can't actually trust what is in that book as revealed to us by God. Okay, so this is just something I'm wanting to point out, and then we're going to get into the fun stuff. Okay, so if we look at all of history, the Bible is actually a lot of history, right? The Bible shows us thousands of years of history, right? So, Brother Toby, if we look at the Bible as a lot of history, and then we look at what archaeology we actually have, Brother Nathan, the archaeological data, or the things that we have found through archaeology, is actually pretty small. Now, I think Brother Waldron just mentioned it downstairs that a high percentage of history has been lost to us. That's very accurate. I mean, you can get on different websites and actually find lists of history books that we know existed at one time because maybe somebody quoted them or something, and then we just don't have them anymore. Entire cities have been lost. They've been buried or destroyed. Libraries have been burnt down, etc. Right? So a lot of history we just don't have. Okay? So the reason I say that is because the things that I am going to show you, Brother Justin, are going to, if we have them, it should be a big deal to us. It should not be like, oh, okay, cool, let's move on. It's like, this is pretty awesome stuff that we even have these things. Okay? All right. So how many of you were at the museum yesterday, and when you walked in and you go all the way to the left, there was that tall case, that tall glass case, and he showed us some little seals, some little cylinders. You guys remember that? A couple of us even got to hold some of those, and they're not very big, right? They're only about this big. But he showed you one of them that if you roll it out, right, it showed, I think it was a man that was sacrificing like a horse or something like that. You guys remember that, Brother Noah? Something like that, okay? So this is the seal over here, and this is what it looks like when it is rolled out, okay? Now, we're getting into actual artifacts that have been found, okay? So we got through all the introduction stuff. We're going to start looking at things that have been found. Now, this particular artifact was created around the time of Abraham, okay? So very old in Genesis history. Now, Brother Joey, give me, I'm putting you on the spot, okay? Because you're wearing that bow tie, you're looking good, okay? You look like you're an observer. So I want you, it doesn't even have to be deep. Just give me a fact about this seal. Just something, an observation from it. Looks like there's a couple people. So you got two people. Now, scholars are going to say probably this looks like a man because he's got the cool horn headdress kind of deal going on. That's probably a woman. Okay, so very good. So we got two people. What else might you observe here? Okay. It looks like you got a snake. All right, anything else?
Maybe like a tree?
Maybe like a tree, with maybe like some fruit or something hanging down. Yeah. Now, I was teaching this a similar lesson just in Tennessee just a couple months ago. And there, I don't even know how old he was, 4 or 5 years old. He was sitting there, and he was just on the edge of his seat. And I showed this, and all of these descriptions that you guys just kind of share. He just exclaims out. He says, "That's Adam and Eve." And I was like, "You, sir, get the gold star," because this is what scholars call the temptation seal. And we actually have two of these. I don't have the image of the other one. There's actually two of these. There's another seal, another imprint that looks like a man and a woman hunched over in shame, and there's a snake behind them. Now, here's what's so fascinating. Okay, do we actually know if this is Adam and Eve? We don't know that like 100%. But here is what I'm trying to articulate to you. That when you look at the Bible, and then you look at history, it's like puzzle pieces that line up. And what we find in history, and then what you read in the Bible, guess what? They match. Because the Bible is a history book. And here's what's so fascinating. That when you look at ancient history, I love this fact. And Brother Zuniga could do a lot better walkthrough of some of these next pieces. That the ancient world, they knew about the events of Genesis. They knew about these things. And I'll show you just a few more. There's so much of this. I want to go through every single thing, Brother Baldwin, but there's just too much to cover in just a short period of time. But I didn't bring it with me. I probably should have, but I just bought a replica of this. It's called the Ark Tablet, and it's only about the size of your palm. And this is a part of a series of tablets that tell a story. And it's the story of Atrahasis, and there's another one that Brother Zuniga brought back from England for me, another tablet that tells the story of a guy named Gilgamesh. And what's so cool about these ancient stories, they're very similar with just a few differences. But Brother Gil, I love these stories because what they tell us is the story of a massive flood. Now, not just a flood like when your grandma was like, the creek is rising, not that kind of flood, okay? A flood that was very devastating. A flood that was very destructive. And it was so destructive because the gods, okay, plural, these gods were very angry with humanity for different reasons. And they said, we're going to destroy the world. But one human, in both of these stories, there was one human that was chosen. They have different names. But Gilgamesh travels to a guy named Utnapishtim. Great name. Great name. There's going to be a lot of great names in this lesson, okay? But Utnapishtim, he's telling a story about to Gilgamesh. And he says, there was a god that told me to build a boat. And this god told me to go and get a bunch of animals to put on this boat. In some stories, they were, two of every kind. There's different variations. And Gilgamesh is hearing this story, and Utnapishtim says that the flood came and destroyed everything, and then after a time, I started to release birds to see if the water had gone down. Does any of this sound familiar to you? Okay, Utnapishtim is like the Babylonian or Sumerian Noah. Okay, and Atrahasis is very similar. So what's so crazy about this is that when you look at ancient history, there are a lot of stories that connect to Genesis. In fact, when I used to teach this at the high school, Calvary Christian School, I had a big world map over on this wall, and I had my laser pointer. And I guess we have one over here, but I don't have my laser pointer out. But I would point to over here where these stories originated from, and I'd say we have these stories from over here, and then I would say we got some over here, and then over here, and over here, and then I would just start going like this, because Antarctica is really the only one that we don't have a flood story from. But there's around 300 flood stories, even in places in North America where it doesn't rain very much. There's no floods today. We have ancient stories from all around the world, around 300 of them, even Native American stories that sound just like Noah. Okay? Now, if you talk to different scholars, they'll give you reasons for their secular reason because they don't believe in the Bible. But what I think happened is the story of Noah actually took place, and then as the generations spread, that story was spread down through the different cultures, looking at that what we would call a parent event, that first event, and then all those stories, and some of them passed into legend. Okay, but the Bible gives us the most accurate, and in many ways the most simple story. It's not extravagant with false gods and different things like that. So I'm going to move on from here, but the ancient world knew about the stories of Genesis. There's even one that sounds just like the Tower of Babel. There's so many fantastic things. So I'm gonna move to, okay, because there's just so many here. Okay, I'm just gonna move to this one, okay, because there, like I said, there's just so many cool ones here. Okay, so let's talk about the Ipuwer papyrus. Okay, now sometimes people, when they hear dates, they hear years. It's like, oh, history's just a bunch of dead people and years and dates and names but these are important, okay, because they're giving us a little bit of a timeline, okay? Now, we don't know exactly when this particular document was written, but it was written around this time, okay? Now, the reason why that year, 13, so that's 1,300 years before Jesus was born, okay? The reason why that date is important is because Moses would have lived around this time. Okay, not exactly, but it's fairly close. Okay. Now, how many of you have ever read the book of Jeremiah in the Bible? Jeremiah wrote another book too, didn't he? Wrote the book of Lamentations. Is that a happy book or a sad book? It's a sad book, right? He's very depressed. He's lamenting, hence the name, right? And he's talking about all these terrible things that are happening in Jerusalem. It's been destroyed. The people are carried away. All of God's anger is on the land, etc. This lament, although it's of course not anywhere near the time of Jeremiah, but it's the same type of writing. This priest in Egypt is very distraught at all of these things that are happening in Egypt. Are you guys with me? Yeah. So I want you to listen, because this is what he wrote about. He says things like this: the rivers have turned to blood. He says that men everywhere in the land are thirsty. He says that there's pestilence. He says there's fire in the land. He says that animals are dying. And then he says something like this: men and children are dying. And then he says that slaves are leaving Egypt with gold around their necks. Does that, brother, I'm going to put you on the spot, brother Noah. Does that sound familiar to you at all? What's it sound like?
Sounds like when the Israelites left.
It sounds like when the Israelites left Egypt. It sounds like the plagues. It sounds like the plagues. Now, do we know for sure if this priest Ipuwer, is he actually talking about the plagues? Maybe we can't know that 100%, but remember what I told you, when you look at ancient history and then you look at the Bible, it's like puzzle pieces that match together, because the Bible is a history book. Okay? And this, so let me pause here, okay? Time out for just a second. Because when you're talking with people and they try to say something like, well, the Bible is just inaccurate, it has all these historical errors, you should ask them which ones they're talking about. Like our good tour guide yesterday was saying, you should ask them. And if they go to somewhere like the plagues, you can say, well, now hold on a second. Because the Ipuwer papyrus says things that sound like the plagues. And the Bible records the plagues. So, if there is some commonalities, how come the Bible should just be thrown away, but we can believe this? Okay? What am I trying to say? I was probably a really dumb kid, because just when I was younger, I thought that you have history over here, like Winston Churchill, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, you have that history over here, but then you have Bible history, it's over here, okay? And they're just different, okay? That's not accurate. Because the Bible is a history book. And the people, and we're going to get into some specifics here in just a little bit, but when you actually find people in the Bible that are kings and queens and rulers, you find them in what we call regular history as well. So we should not think of Peter and Paul or David as any different than someone like Alexander or the Roman emperors, because the Bible's history book. So don't let people intimidate you by trying to say that that the Bible's inaccurate, there's historical errors in it, because there is so much history in the Bible, and I'm skipping through so much here. Let's do this one. Okay? So some Bible trivia here, okay? Now notice the year. This was just discovered somewhat recently, just a few years ago. This is part of a clay jar that has the name Jerubbaal on it. Jerubbaal. In all of history, we only know of one individual that has this nickname. Right? And it is found in Judges 6. We don't often call him Jerubbaal. What do we normally call him, Brother Adrian? Bible trivia time. You remember? Someone, sword drill. Judges 6. Who is it? Judges 6. Sister Ariana is going to do it. She's getting close. Uh, 634. Say it out loud. Gideon. Everybody say Gideon.
Gideon.
Okay, now here's what's so crazy. What is one of the objects that's super famous to the Gideon story? Clay jars, right? Because they broke them, and we have a clay jar that has his name on it. Now, did he actually hold this? Okay, probably not. Okay, or maybe, who knows? We don't know. But again, what you find in the Bible and what you find in history, you find in the archaeology, what do we see? They match. Why? Because the Bible is a history book. Okay? This is pretty fantastic. And again, this is not, that we know of, just some random guy named Jerubbaal. Because again, in all of history, we only know of one guy who had that name. Gideon from the Bible. Okay? So, pretty awesome stuff. Now, this next one is one of my favorites. Or probably my favorite. If you were at the museum yesterday, you saw a replica of this. This is also on the cover of our book, The Apostolic Classroom. And that's me. Now, Brother Zuniga took that picture. Brother Zuniga and I, we went to the Bible Museum in Washington, D.C. That was in the fall, right? So just a few months ago, less than a year ago. Because this incredible artifact was on display there. Now, this artifact is absolutely incredible because the next picture you'll be able to see a little bit better, but right here, okay, right there, there's a little highlight on the actual stone. And this artifact really shook the archaeological scholarly world in the early to mid 1990s, okay, so a very long time ago, the 1990s.
Careful.
And I was born in the 90s, brother. I was born in 1991, dear Lord. But this artifact has the name, it has a few names in it, but it has the name of a particular individual that is crucial to the history of the Bible. It's even crucial, this individual is even crucial to the identity of Jesus. Because if this individual did not exist, then the identity and even the lineage of Jesus is in jeopardy. Okay? This is what we call the Tel Dan Stele. Okay? And that little highlighted part there says the house or the dynasty of David. Now this is mind-blowing. This should be mind-blowing, okay? This is you believe King David existed, right? Like King David, yay, right? Awesome. David and Goliath. Probably one of the earliest stories you remember in your Sunday school years, right? King David not King David yet, but David and Goliath, probably pretty early in your childhood or coming into church. You learned this story, very famous story. But what if it wasn't real? Has anybody ever heard of King Arthur? Now, King Arthur did not exist as this individual we know as King Arthur. There's some legends and some Roman generals and some people that maybe developed into this idea of King Arthur. But there were people like Israel Finkelstein, remember the guy at the beginning. There are people like him that look at David and say, well, King David wasn't real. He's kind of like King Arthur. Kind of just a great story, but maybe there was somebody like him, this like chieftain guy that defeated a few tribesmen or something like that, but not really that accurate of a guy until this, well, it's actually two pieces, until this was found in rubble in northern Israel in the early 90s. Because scholars were shocked to find out that this artifact, and there's another one too. I don't have a picture of it. You can look this one up. It's called the Moabite stone. You can see that. But they're both discovered, or at least published the same year. And what's so awesome about this is, okay, and again, timelines are important, okay? I try not to throw too many dates and years at you. But David, very easy year to remember, David lived around 1000 BC, 1,000 years before Jesus was born, okay? This artifact dates to just a little bit over 100 years after that. So think about that. Because what had happened, what this document tells us, is that there was an enemy king that attacked Israel and Judah. And this king was bragging about defeating a king from the house of David. That tells us some things. That tells us that David had a kingdom, that his descendants were in kingship over this kingdom, okay? And tells us that he was important enough for someone to brag about defeating someone from his line, okay? You don't brag about beating up. Now, my wife is a first grade teacher, so if you actually did this, she'll beat you up, okay? But you would never come in and say, I beat up a first grader, right? Because that'd be ridiculous, right? But if you were like, I was just in a boxing match and I just, beat up somebody. I mean, your dad's a big dude, right? I mean, if you beat up somebody, not beat up, but like, let's say you box, right? So it was a good, or you sparred with them or something, right? People would be like, wow, that's pretty impressive, right? But nobody brags about defeating someone that was much smaller than them. This is a big deal, okay? All of that to say, guess what? King David was a real person. Shocking, isn't it? Maybe we can believe in the Bible. And again, there's one other, and then maybe even a third artifact that talks about King David. But this is pretty impressive stuff. But it doesn't stop there. What time was that supposed to be done? Oh, man, this is fantastic. So there's all of these other seals and all these other documents that have the names of kings. We even have an artifact, a little seal. It looks like it says Isaiah the prophet. These are the names. You can see them there. These are all descendants of King David, and we have their artifacts too. And there's so many fun things here that if you were to actually look through the history of the kings and then compare them to like Assyrian history, I mean, we have artifacts that have Ahab's name on it, Ahab's dad's name on it. We have an artifact that says Jezebel. We have all these things, and so it just goes to show us that what the Bible recorded, what the Bible has kept, or rather what God has given to us and God has kept preserved, is accurate. Because as we've been saying, if you can't trust the events, then how can you trust what God has given to us through those events? Would you be Pentecostal if the day of Pentecost did not happen? I don't think so, because it would be a false event. but we base what we believe on truth, right? So there's so many here. I'm just gonna skip ahead. Brother Zuniga is gonna hit some Assyria stuff, I think, at some point. So I'm gonna skip some of these. Let's go to the New Testament, and then maybe I'll stop in a few minutes, and maybe if there are questions, that way we can. I've got some sources to give you guys, a couple resources, some YouTube channels and some books too that would be fun. So let's jump to the New Testament, okay? Now, the Old Testament covers like 4,000 years of history, something like that, a long period of time. The New Testament only covers about 100 years, right? So it's a little bit smaller as far as its scope of chronology. But here's what's so cool. If you look at the Gospel of John, if you read through the Gospel of John, there are over 40 facts that we have found that are accurate from what John wrote. Okay, like one example would be John talks about different pools, and he talks about the temple, and then we can go through archaeology and actually see that what he wrote, okay, is accurate. Now, why is that important? Because it looks like he was there. Like it looks like he could see, okay? And what's just amazing about this is it looks like he saw these things before the Romans destroyed Jerusalem. Okay, now, maybe we don't have time to get too far into that, but when the Romans come in and destroyed the city after Jesus had went to heaven, it'd be very hard for someone to accurately talk about Jerusalem before that destruction, because it was so leveled, it was so destroyed. How could somebody come along decades later and talk about something that had been so destroyed and still be super accurate? It'd be very difficult to do that. It would be like you guys in here, if I asked you guys to write a description of this room, if you could be like, oh yeah, there's pictures hanging on the wall over here, we have a screen up here, there's some tall weird guy talking, and we have speakers over here, there's a door. If you guys wrote these things and then passed them down, they could probably envision this room pretty well. But what if this church was abandoned? And then maybe even, God forbid, it was leveled. And then somebody came much later and tried to accurately give a description of this room. It probably would be difficult, wouldn't it? Because they'd never seen it. But guess what? John was there. He saw what Jesus did. He was at that pool when that man was healed of his blindness. Because what we're finding in the Bible was written, yes, by eyewitnesses, but then when you have the Spirit that comes at the same time, and Jesus said that the Spirit's going to come and bring all things unto your remembrance. And you're going to remember all these things, and you're going to write them down, John. You're going to write these things down, Matthew and Luke, and just wonderful things. Let's talk about Luke, because in the book of Acts, if you just go from chapter 13 to 28, there are around 90 confirmed facts. Now, why is that? Okay, what starts in Acts 13? It really had not happened until this point. We still support them today because they're going to leave their homeland and they're going to start traveling to preach the gospel. The missionary journeys began in Acts 13. And Paul goes to these faraway regions over the next several decades. And Luke is recording, Luke is writing these things. And Luke, he talks about the weather that's kind of particular to certain regions. He uses slang words. Sometimes he even says like the names of rulers, governors, and different people that are only found in those regions. And there was a time in history where atheists and critics of the Bible would laugh and say, Luke made that word up. And then they come to find out, wow, Luke actually, they would uncover inscriptions and archaeology artifacts. And they would say, wow, Luke actually got this right. If somebody, some of you are not from Rio Linda, I know that. Some of you might be more in a different state. Brother Baldwin, you're in Michigan. If somebody came up to you guys and started saying, oh yeah, I know your hometown, and they listed the country festival that your city loves or whatever, or a local food, they talk about a governor that is in your area, and they started listing off all these things, what would you think about that individual? They must have been there. How did Luke know where there's the island of Cauda? How did he know where that island was when other ancient historians got the location wrong? How come Luke gets it so right? Because he was in that boat when Paul is sailing to Rome. Okay, what I'm trying to tell you is that when you're reading the Bible, it's not just a bunch of fairy tales. And even something as simple as learning that when Paul is traveling to Rome to go to be a witness to the most powerful and a very wicked man in that era, it's not just a detail that we throw away. It's not just a detail we push aside, but it's God showing us that these events were real. They actually happened. There's so many of these things we don't have time to go through. I'm going to try to wrap this up in the next couple minutes here. But even just the Gospel of Luke begins. Okay, when I was 10 or 11 years old, I was fascinated by Roman history. I still have the book on my shelf. I can take you to our house and pull the book off and show it to you. I'm reading this book and I'm just enthralled with, man, this Augustus guy, his story is incredible. Tiberius, what an incredible general. What just crazy, interesting stories to me as a 10, 11-year-old. And you know what I started doing? I started reading the Bible. And then in Luke 2 it says, in those days there went forth a decree from Caesar Augustus that the whole world should be taxed. And it hit me. I'm reading about this Augustus guy, but he's in the Bible too. And then his stepson / son-in-law / adopted son, Tiberius, the next emperor of Rome, it says in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, who began to preach? John the Baptist. And you start seeing that what we see, what we find in history, and then what we find in the Bible, they match. Because the Bible, ladies and gentlemen, is a history. So what Luke is doing here, he's tying his history. He's tying these events that he's recording. He's tying them to very specific times in history. He's showing you that Caiaphas was a real person. And if you were listening yesterday at the museum, our good guide said that Caiaphas, his bones were in this box. Nobody doubts the existence of Tiberius. And there was an image of it on the wall. That's called the Pilate inscription. Because there were even some people that doubted that Pilate even existed. But we have found all of these people in history. And I'll end it with this. All these people are pretty fantastic. But there's also one other person that is all over the ancient world that he doesn't get enough credit in today's world as far as history goes. But there's this guy named Jesus that even if you did not have the Bible, you could still learn from 17 different sources who this Jesus guy was. Now 17 may not seem like very much, but you have to understand that when it comes to ancient history, the Roman emperor that we just had the picture of, Tiberius, if I remember correctly, he has 10 sources. And those are Christian and non-Christian. But when you look at Jesus within 150 years of his life, that would be like from our time getting closer to like Abraham Lincoln or something like that. He has 17. Why in the world would ancient history write more about an executed Jewish criminal in comparison to the great Roman emperor? It makes no sense unless this executed criminal changed the world and was more than just an executed criminal. So I'm just up here trying to show you that the Bible has a lot of cool things in it. And I'll just really quick. There's a few of these like Tacitus, Josephus, Suetonius. They say things like, you know, we know this Jesus guy. We know he was in Judea. We know Pontius Pilate executed him. This happened when Tiberius was the emperor. They say these things. And Josephus even said, now, we don't know, he probably did not believe this, but Josephus even said, 3 days after Jesus died, people claimed to see him risen again. That's pretty incredible, because the Bible is true. So let me give you, I'll take questions in just a second. Now, the first book that I showed you was a horrible example. That book was called The Bible Unearthed. Don't get that one, okay? Get this one. This is Unearthing the Bible, okay? This particular scholar, Titus Kennedy, he has 3 or 4 books out now. He is a fantastic scholar. There's only a couple things I've found that I disagree with him with, But this book is amazing because what it's going to do, it's going to give you about, I should have brought it to show you guys, but it gives you about 1 or 2 pages description of an artifact. It tells you what it is, why it's important, and then it moves on. And I love that because some archaeology books, they go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And then they do tell you all the important stuff, but it's kind of overkill to some degree. This is a great book to start with. Okay, fantastic book to start with. And then here are a couple YouTube sources. Actually, the museum guy that we talked about yesterday, he knows this particular guy here, Joel Kramer, and Brother Waldron just mentioned him downstairs. And Brother Waldron has a podcast as well, if you want a podcast. But these are great resources. Okay, so we have a couple minutes. Let's end it with this. The Bible is Bible's a history book. All right. Does anybody have any questions? There is so much that we just kind of passed over just for the sake of time. I tried to show you some of my favorite ones, but there's so many more. There are ancient letters written between Canaan and Egypt that sound like the Canaanites are asking for help because a bunch of people are coming in and invading their country. It sounds like Joshua. So there's a lot of really awesome things. Does anybody have any questions? It's okay if you don't. I just was going to give a couple minutes. Okay. Well, I guess. When is lunch?
So at 11:50 there's another split session, but Rebecca will be in here, and then lunch is at 12.
Okay, so this is just the break then?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right, hopefully that was somewhat interesting. I didn't see too many people fall asleep. So.
I was almost there.
Brother Jeremiah was like, nah,
I wanted to so bad.
He wasn't even fighting. He was like, let's sleep now. All right, fantastic.
This is the first year they did 3 sessions.
Oh.
Because I thought lunch was next.
Yes, sir.
Then I got a text.
For the
It said,
tell Dan.
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Did you have to finish
11:50.
on there?
So I don't have the whole text off the top of my head.